William would like if we could hold questions till the end. It's hard for him to see everybody, but also so he can get through his presentation. Um, I'm also going to introduce him. William Becker is my new friend. He is an international psychic medium who combines his love of history and psychic abilities to explore what lies beyond the veil. He's the author of In the Footsteps of My Forebears, A Psychic's Journey Through Time, which, by the way, is a very good book, in which he returns to the German Volga region where his grandparents immigrated from in 1912. So he combines this history of spirits, ancestors, very interesting, and his work explores how mediumship and his personal history kind of intersect in a profound and deeply human way, in deeply human ways, right? So if you want to say a few more things, William, I want to introduce you. I'm so glad to have you here.
Kelly, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be part of this. And thank you for such a great introduction. I actually have a bachelor's degree in history, and I grew up with my grandma talking about the old country. So, I mean, all of this is so personal. And my dad was a history teacher. So, you know, since I could hold a National Geographic on my own, I've been all these places I've always wanted to go. But I bring that into the work as a medium and then also put that in with investigations. And I find that the different disciplines really do contribute and add to each other. And what I've got for the presentation today, it's kind of in two different pieces, but those pieces are different aspects of the same overall picture. And part of what I look to do in life in general, as well as with the work, is to make everything as full pictured as possible. I like to understand what's going on in those realms our physical senses don't always necessarily pick up, as well as the physical, as well as the history. And we'll get into more of that. As far as mediumship on an investigation, we can help. A small caveat here. It's important if you're a medium working with somebody or somebody's team on an investigation to find out exactly what they want from you as a medium. And you can give ideas about ways you can help the investigation and help it focus in times. But remember who actually the lead is and make sure you have all the communication pieces set up and in play first instead of creating a tension or a problem. So we can add context to the paranormal activity. Sometimes my tongue works, sometimes it doesn't. We can help identify the entities that are present. We can work with the EVP sessions as well. I'll get into a little bit more on all these in just a minute. We can help bring understanding to the reasons behind the activity. We can have the two-way communication with the entities that are there. And we can work with clients to establish ground rules. And I use the word entity or being because there's rarely a full spirit or soul. And when there is, I have yet to run across anything that's stuck and there against their will. It's pieces of our consciousness, our awareness, our intelligence, our personality, our history, pieces of our being, our soul that we leave behind or that visit. You know, my grandma comes to visit. She's not here, but she does bring a little piece of her every now and again. And I can tell I've got a 10 kopeck coin from Russia and it moves. And I know grandma's been here. So, and I just say thank you. And let's see. Okay, Tech and I are not good friends. Adding content to the paranormal activity, we can watch the history of the location, and that can help bring an understanding more than just the book. You know, you go to a historic spot and you've got all the written information about it. You've got research that's done that you can read in books, maybe talk to people who lived through part of the history. But that doesn't replace the extra piece a medium that's watching the history can bring to that as well. We can add a little bit more depth and life to what has been written down and take it a little bit beyond just cognitive into a more of a visual and comprehensive understanding, if that makes sense. And all of that together, I think, is really important. We can help identify the entities that are present. A lot of times they're not human. Just because they're not human doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. Dogs aren't human either, but I love dogs and mostly they love me. You know, and there's this idea so often in the community and in society and from TV shows that it's this or that. My reality or understanding is it's a little too cut and dried, and things kind of merge and blend a little bit more. And you're going to have crabby, not very nice humans, as well as some crabby, not very nice non-humans. And I believe in the non-humans because I've had physical experiences with them. When you see elementals, the fae, or with your own two eyes, sometimes in the middle of the day, and see a Bigfoot physically right there, it's hard to say they don't exist. But I need those kind of physical experiences to back up any mediumship or psychic experiences to begin with, so that I know that I'm not just in my imagination. But we can also then help give descriptions about what these beings look like. And, you know, it's mostly what they allow us to see, but it still helps put together that whole picture. Working with EVPs, we can help guide the questioning. If we see a little boy aged 5 whose name is being told his name is Tommy, we can use that information to ask questions like, is there a little boy here named Tommy? Are you 5 years old? Do you have brown hair and are you wearing a blue suit? And then hopefully get some confirmation on the recordings. And with EVPs, for me personally, I don't consider ghost box stuff an actual EVP. To me, an EVP is question and answer on a straight, flat recorder, none of where the entity is leaving the impression directly, not other sounds and such being manipulated. It's just cleaner that way, and I'm more sure that, okay, this isn't some kind of a glitch or some kind of a program that's making it happen. And we can also give some confirmation, and this is a little bit touchy in a sense because mediums can be like everybody else sometimes, victims of or susceptible to suggestion. And if an EVP session or some kind of equipment is showing activity or action or information coming through, sometimes we can help be objective and confirm or debunk that activity or communication. That being said, we also don't see everything. And so just because something comes through that is different than our experience doesn't mean either one is wrong. It means there isn't a match. And we could be seeing or hearing two very different things that are in the same space at different times. And that's the same kind of thing too when you have two mediums that are seeing something a little different sometimes. Doesn't necessarily mean either one of them is wrong. It's a little bit harder to have confirmation that way, but and it's good to question when that happens, but it isn't necessarily a negative. Okay. And we can ask, well, anybody can ask who they are, but we have a better chance of hearing them reply. And again, why they are there. Why are they active? What are they looking for? And we can, are the beings interacting through awareness or just rote behavior? We can help facilitate the communication between the client and the entities. And then we can bring all this to work with the client to establish ground rules. I've worked with people at times who have called me up, and I don't do this kind of thing very often, but they've been really concerned. They've wanted something out of their house because it scares them. And I can go tell them what's going on and what the entities are saying, what their needs are, and then see how people can, the breathing impaired. And was that Pete? One of my good friends created that term, and I can't remember which one, but how they to exist in the same space and explain to the entities what's acceptable and what isn't. Give the breathing people a chance to say, oh, yes, let me tell you why we're tearing up the kitchen you loved, or something like that. Why are we doing this remodel? And emphasizing it's because you love the place. That's just an example. And then give expectations and come up with an agreement. Okay, yeah, you're fine here. Just don't visit when we're sleeping or leave the kids alone, or yeah, the bathrooms are off limits, at least when we're in them, something like that. And every time I've done this with people, they've been fine to have the entity stay once they understand what's really going on. Knowledge takes away the fear factor. People are afraid of the unknown. And once that is no longer a mystery, then, oh, this is okay. Now, this is something that I really love to do. And using mediumship while exploring. And I've been very fortunate in my life that I was able to do quite a bit of traveling. I need to get those funds replenished somehow because I haven't been out of the country since the fall of 2021, and it's, well, except for a week in Canada, and it's driving me crazy. But I like to watch the history unfold in places and then have it confirmed. I mean, when you're standing on a street corner in Sligo and you're seeing Jacobites and Roundheads um, on different street corners, and then finding out, oh, yeah, these things actually, these people were here, and this is real. Often we can communicate with these beings, and not always. And I also find that I sometimes stumble into one of my past lives. Often areas that I've wanted to go all my life are places I've had a past life connection to. And this is not a place that I had so much connection to, but I did get to read a lot. This is a place called Grimes Graves. It's a Neolithic and Bronze Age flint mine. Just because people were making bronze tools and weapons doesn't mean that they didn't still use flint. It was a lot cheaper and easier to do than bronze, and especially the early Bronze Age. There are a series of pits that go down, and one of them was open. You climb down this ladder, about 60 feet or something like that, and then there are several different tunnels off the main chamber. And I could see ritual taking place in these areas. Some of that included fanning smoke into some of the chambers. And I could also see the miners working, coring out, um, shaping out the flint. And I believe in this one, I think it was right in through here area, I really could see a burial. And I'm not sure exactly why on that, except a lot of times these groups would have burials or a family member, for example, under the hearth in their homes. And so the relationships were very different. And I did find out historically that when these mines were opened, when they were being closed, there would be rituals, and there would be rituals that took place during the active period. Okay. This is really fun because the there was a little bit of a museum type area in the small building that covered the opening to this mine. And they let you handle things. Those arrowheads go back to 2500 BCE, and so does the hammerstone. And the hands you see are mine. And as a medium, I could watch the shaping, the flint knapping of these stones. I could see the hunters using them. The same with the hammerstone. I could see it being used, partly in shaping flint, but also in pounding and putting together pieces. It was really fascinating. And this one, this is a mammoth tooth from 200,000 BCE. So back a little ways. And there wasn't a lot of energy coming from it, but it was so fascinating to be able to hold something like that, but also to get a picture of the mammoth and what that area looked like at the time, because this would have been well before the last ice age, I believe. Well, yeah, it would have been. Okay. Now this gets into some of what I really love. This is Ramses III's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And again, these are parts of the area that or the world I've wanted to see ever since I knew they existed. And when I was in these tombs, in just about every one of them, I could watch the scribes and the artisans doing the painting, the priest doing the sculpture work, creating what is an incredibly huge, complicated, beautiful prayer, basically, and magic formulas for the afterlife and for the pharaoh to continue existing and helping Egypt and the people of Egypt. That's part of why so much care was given and to temples and pyramids and burial places, because the success of the country was very much determined by how well the pharaohs could continue on as gods in the afterlife. This is the Edfu temple. Here, I got a piece of a past life, and I was a priest, not a high priest, but I was leading part of the celebration. And I wasn't concerned about if the god was real or not. There was a party going on, there was joy, but it was about uniting people and community. And the culture and civilization was part of keeping the function of society. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is a quarry, and they were getting some of the blocks of stone, I believe, for temples and pyramids from here. But also, this is a lot of the obelisks came from here. And you can see the workers pounding and scoring a line around the shape, to give the outline of the shape of what they're trying to do. And then you can see them put the fires on these outlines, these scores. And so they get super, super hot, and then pouring the cold water on them so they fracture and split. They had a very efficient way of coring these stones. And remember, this is also Bronze Age. They did have bronze tools. It wasn't just all, at the very beginning, they were more copper than bronze, but it wasn't just stone. And it was the history of how they did it is remarkable, but seeing that play out was even more so. And this temple, I don't remember the name, but this is one, again, I had a past life here. I was a Greek businessman at the time. And so this is pre-Roman, but after Alexander the Great. And I could tell that many of the priests knew that the rituals and the rites didn't have magic, that the whole gods concept wasn't really real, but they knew the importance of doing all of this to keep stability in the country and a functioning society. There were others that recognized it from a greed and power standpoint. And in fact, at times, the priests and in fact, I think it was at Karnak, was some of more powerful than the pharaohs, and certainly richer. The population often had the same variation in levels of understanding as what I could see from all of this. And I'm not aware of historical research that really specifically deals with those questions, but I think that it is probably documented in some way or another. I need to go and try to find out, actually. Okay, and I hope you aren't all getting whiplash from the journeys back and forth from different continents to different countries, but that's part of my brain. This is Barry Pomeroy Castle, and it's over by Dartmoor in Devon, in England. Beautiful, beautiful area. And I took a friend of mine there that lives in the area. I drove, he gave me directions. And he does investigating, and he's something of a medium as well. And in castles in general, it's fascinating to be able to watch the Lord and Lady of the Manor coming down the stairs, or the joust, or the banquet, or the dungeons, to be honest. We see it all. It isn't always nice, but having a foundation in history, I don't get squeamish about it. It's what was. And that's no judgment. That was then. But one of the people that's supposed to be haunting this location is the Gray Lady. And not quite in this part. I think, I can't remember exactly. I didn't get a good picture of where she was. She has been seen physically by my friend, but also I had real clear visual and communication with her from a mediumship perspective. I couldn't find all the notes to go with that, but one of the things that I'm disappointed about still is it was that trip or the one after it. This same friend and I went to Dartmoor again. I've been a couple times up there. We were in a late Neolithic to early Bronze Age village site, and ran into several burial kists. And I almost literally tripped over one that it was very clear. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh, that was mine. Unfortunately, in copying pictures off cameras and backing them up and doing things, I think I stopped the process too soon, and I can't find the pictures from that day, and it pisses me off. But anyway, okay. Now, most of you probably know about Harry Price with Borley Rectory, and he was pretty famous, early investigator of the paranormal. Borley was supposed to be incredibly haunted. Reports go back into the 1800s. The site had been a convent at one point. The site goes way back. The nearest town, Borley, is just a few little buildings and a church, a small church, which is also haunted. But the Long Melford, I've got a picture later, a little bit later, is the nearby town about 6-8 miles away. And that has been settled continuously since about 8400 BCE. So the first half really of the Mesolithic in the UK. But anyway, the picture on our left, I think it's this one, was Harry Price's grave. I was visiting friends that live close to this site. And then here are Harry Bull and the Bulls who lived in the rectory. I think they had been priests of the church or ministers of the church, and had a lot of the paranormal activity around the rectory stemmed around that family too at the time of Harry Price. So not a lot of strong readings, but I put them in because they're such an important part of paranormal research and development. Okay, this is where the rectory used to stand. And I could see people going about business. I could see there had been a fire, and the building, I think, had a few fires, and it was fire that basically just left it such a shell. It was eventually pulled down. It seems like it felt like there could have been arson involved. And it's also seemed that with the paranormal activity, some of it was exaggerated by people living in the house at the time, looking for attention. And some of it was faked, and some of it was real. And so kind of a combination is what it felt like. And I've done more reading about price and about the location after having been there. And there were questions all along about some of the accuracy. Some of this, there's no logical way it could have been faked, but other pieces it certainly could have been. And there were a lot of really very credible people witnessing things. Okay, and this is the old bull where Harry Price would stay before he actually moved into the rectory. Oh, and I lied. Long Melford goes back to 8300 BCE. I think I said 84. But I could see people in the pub. And just on the streets and alongside it, habitation, a bunch of different time zone or lines of people, a bunch of different history. And this all puts in more of an understanding to what kind of activity can be going on in these places. When you see all of this, it's like, oh yeah, that would account for X, Y, and Z. It really helps put those pictures together. And in my case, hopefully for one of these days when I get to it. I didn't stay here. This friend of mine and I got rooms at an ancient building across the street that was less expensive and a lot nicer rooms. But we did eat dinner here. And it was great. You had to do it if you're in the area. And this is Ephesus. Turkey is one of my favorite places in the world. I just love it. Not everything about politics, but it's the cradle of civilization happened here. They're finding out more and more. This is where functioning societies really developed. And the city that we see is the Roman buildup and change and modification of the city. The city goes back many thousands of years. I believe the Mycenaeans founded it as a city. It's been around even longer than that. It's one of the temple of Aphrodite, which is along this street. I got to see it as one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. And when you're standing here, this is a fairly steep downhill, actually. You start at the top of the city and then walk down. And that's where the two of us will put you up at the top, and then you walk down and pick it up at the bottom. But you could see the people from all over the world walking up and down the streets, and different time periods too, just because these buildings are more modern, um, relatively more modern, doesn't mean that the energy and the entities from the beginning aren't still there. And then the facade building on our right was the library. And a rich man had developed the library. But one of the secrets about the library was that it had a secret passage to a brothel that was across the street. And so respectable men could go into the library and then go down to through the passage under the street and have a nice afternoon. And the only people would know would be people that they ran into in the brothel. So it was pretty safe. And just the way it all works sometimes can be so fascinating. Also, you can't quite see it here, but there's a flat plane off behind the building that stretches for, well, for forever, it seems like. And that used to be ocean. A lot of these ancient cities were abandoned, at least in part because the harbor silted up. And that's part of what happened here. I think earthquake and a few other things were also part of the problems. But if your harbor is no longer good and you're a shipping trading center, well, you're out of business. And so it's fun to be sitting there or standing there looking out over the plain and watching ships sailing or being rowed through the plain. Okay, now this is in Troy. On the picture on the left, oh, okay, sorry. It just, the computer was making weird noises and stuff. It looked like an early Bronze Age soldier, but maybe earlier, because this site goes back well into prehistory. And the picture was the plains as an example of what I was talking about. And if you look far enough out there in the distance, you can actually get a sense of the ocean out there. And but you can also watch the ships up and through here. And so Agamemnon and all the rest didn't have that far to march to take the city siege. And okay. Now, part of, I kind of mentioned before, part of the interesting things about being a medium in historic spots is some of what's revealed to you. And in this case, was right in this area. I don't have the exact picture, but right in through here. I saw a small group of women with a big bronze cauldron, or it looked bronze anyway, full of human blood from a human sacrifice. I checked afterwards, and yes, human sacrifice was still happening in that spot during the Bronze Age. I knew it would have been much earlier, but I wasn't sure just when it ended in which areas. And so historically, what I was seeing is very likely. It's always good when you can back up the readings with historic fact that you didn't know really beforehand. Okay, now we're back in England. And this is on Salisbury Plain, real close to Stonehenge. I can't remember how many burial mounds there are in this area, tons of them. This is West Kennett Longborough, and I got to go in it. It's just open. It's, if any of you haven't been to England and experienced it, you go into you go through a stile or a gate onto a path that's in a field, a farmer's field, and there are right away laws and access. And you're walking through this on the way up to this ancient site. And going inside, this is a Neolithic chamber, and I could see the passages had alcoves where bodies had been put, and inside the chamber rooms there would have been as well. And I could see bodies laid out, but also ritual taking place in these centers, usually with a fire. But the because I usually with the fire, but not always. And sometimes there's music and dancing. Sometimes it's more solemn. But these cultures didn't have such a fine delineation between what we think of as the living and the dead as our current societies do. Frankly, they had a little bit more realistic one. And having loved ones close could help with protection and knowledge and all kinds of things. Okay. And this is Avebury, which is the largest stone circle, I believe, in Europe. And it's a little bit older than Stonehenge. It's about 6-7 miles away from Stonehenge. It's a pretty magical place altogether. It's so big, the village is partly built in it. It's a series of 3 circles. And I did see myself as a priest in this one, actually performing sacrifice. So time period and what that would have been, I'm not quite sure. I don't know of evidence of human sacrifice within these circles, but that's what was going on from what I saw. And I also saw another version, another life where I was the victim of the sacrifice, but that's okay too. This is over by Tintagel, and Tintagel is one of the legendary birthplaces of Arthur. It's close to Boscastle. I stayed in Boscastle. This was on the way. And there's a little stone cave type den where a 6th century, I think it was, saint had lived. And I have to double check the dates. And it's interesting. You get to go and see it and pick up a little of the feel for him. But then you pay your money and you can go down the stairs down to the river. And it's really a beautiful, fascinating area. Walking in, it's a long pathway, kind of dirt, not quite big enough to even over there to be a road, and I'm not sure how long it is. At least a mile, I think, and maybe a couple. And when you get down there, these falls are just incredible. They're so beautiful and majestic and magical. But it seems to be a place where people are associating elementals thinking of fairies. And you see brightly colored ribbons tied to the trees and little stone piles and such all over the place. And it's interesting because I had quite a talk with the beings there, and the ones that liked the ribbons didn't have the depth. It's like the party crowd. And they loved it because it was a party and people would be singing, dancing, whatever. But it was just that whole bright, festive atmosphere. But the true ancient ones that were deeply connected to the place were not so amused. They didn't like the fact that people, both their less serious relatives and as well as the humans, didn't, for the most part, understand the true significance and nature of the place and didn't show proper reverence and respect for it. Now, it was clean and all that. It's just that, people weren't trashing it, but they weren't communicating and communing with its real purpose in being. They were keeping it superficial. It's like saying the Mona Lisa is kind of a pretty painting. Let's see. Never mind that. We'll go up here. This is rock fortifications by Vidin, which is in Croatia. I think it was Croatia. It's not far from the Danube. I was on a Danube cruise when we went here. And there is a series of natural rock formations that look like castles. And I had a better picture that somehow or another escaped me while I was trying to put together the slide. But these sites, this one in particular, was used before the Romans all the way up through the end of World War I as fortification. And it's so fascinating because these are hills that rise naturally out of plains. And so just down at the bottom of this are plains where I could watch the Roman soldiers exercise and practice and do sport and all the rest of it. And then see the Byzantines and see the Ottomans attack. But I only could see small skirmishes. I didn't see any big battles. And I found out, yes, that was accurate. There weren't any big battles, just a few small skirmishes here. And then the Venetians, after they took over, and all the way up through the wars or World War I was able to verify uniforms and such after the fact to make sure I was seeing the people I felt like they were. But it's one of the things I really love. There wasn't communication with them. These are pictures that would come to me. But again, it gives more of an idea of what could be happening in these places. Plus, I just love it. And this is Lake Bled in Slovenia, I believe. And the lake itself is something of a mystery because the water all comes up from springs underneath the lake. It doesn't have an inlet per se. It's fresh water, so there is an outlet, I believe. But the site goes back to the 8th century, but BCE. But actually, there's evidence of even further back than that. Whoa. Yeah, tech is not my strong point. Okay. This picture I took as part of a piece with ancient fertility um, centers, and people would come to the site, actually, probably kind of right up around in here for fertility rites to have children, to, bless the process, all of that. And I got the treat of seeing how that was done, which is always interesting. It's a little voyeuristic, but you get the idea and then you turn away. Um, but it's important to mention this because it still goes on in a sense. There's a staircase from the boat landing. Oh, these boats have had the same families licensed since the 16 or 1700s. And only those families can operate these boats that take you from the shore to the island. But this staircase up has 99 stairs. And the tradition is the groom carries the bride from the bottom all the way up the 99 stairs. And if he can do that and still carrying her at the top, they'll have a long and happy life together and lots of children. And inside the church, they have a rope to ring the bell, and you ring the bell 3 times and you're supposed to get your romantic wish. It didn't work. Okay. And this is at a Tintagel. And time-wise, oops, I'm sorry, I've gone a little long. But mediumship not only assists us in more fully experiencing the locations, for the investigator, a good medium can help direct where to focus, what sort of activity, and who is around, and more. This is very much a motto I have. The more we can experience the world around us, the richer and more complete our lives are. And questions. I'm so sorry I didn't cut off a little shorter.
You're good. Does anybody have questions for William? I can't see everybody, so you can unmic if you do.
I appreciate all of you being here, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Hi, William. I'm Kathy.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for all of this. It just made me connect that when you visit your past life places, it makes me think of time travel as well.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, time travel. So and then you said you use the word haunted. So haunted places, but for me, I think of the energy. Energy is everywhere.
True.
But some places may hold more energy because of whoever was there before, so that when yourself as a medium or other mediums or other, would you call them empaths or more sensitive people, go into these places, they're more able to just tune into what's there. So that's basically a tuning in to what's there and how it resonates with us. So one of my questions is, like, all the places you visited where you had these past life, did you get to identify any of your relatives there?
Oh, that's interesting. No, no, there were a couple cases where when I was with another medium, I had names and such, but the people were so long gone. You know, these lives that I picked up on, most of them were 3,000 years old or older.
But you recognized yourself in those places, and I
Yes.
wondered if you recognized how you were related exactly to them besides being yourself. And then how many Were there any that you experience in your current life?
Any, what
Relatives
was the
from your past lives?
relatives from past lives in my current life?
Mhm.
Good question. I think there are people that travel in soul groups,
Mhm.
and sometimes those are DNA relatives and sometimes they aren't. I have a couple friends that I go many, many lives with, and one friend in particular, we're soul brothers. We go back to the very beginning of ourselves. As far as people, what I get drawn to the areas and the desire to go, but I don't I don't really know any of the people now. And I'm, you look, because our soul DNA is different than our physical DNA. And my DNA, you don't get any more white, northern, Western European. There's a little bit of Neanderthal and maybe like a thousandth of a percent of some of Middle East from back when we broke off out of Africa and started diverging 30 and 40,000 years ago, my particular genetic tree. So in many of these places, there's nothing there. Now in England, yeah, they're probably still relatives, but we left England for this continent in 1635, so there's no contact. And the time periods we're looking at are long before modern Brits, for the most part. This is before the Anglo-Saxons came in, and I think that's kind of how we got there, as I think we were part of the Anglo-Saxons. Now, in Russia, the old country, we're Germans, we're not Russians, but we went with Catherine the Great. In 1941, Stalin removed every German out of the country, either dead, exiled to Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, or Siberia. And we had some of both, all of it. And the town, the village my grandparents are from, doesn't have any remnant of any of them. Mostly they're people from the stands that have stayed there. So I'm not aware, it's a good question, but I'm not aware of any living relatives from the past life pieces. Did I answer the question?
Yes, very much, and thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, I understand too about the soul families. So
Yeah,
yes, thank you.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a really good question.
Yeah,
And thank you to William, right? That was really fascinating. Um,
thank you.
yeah, and we are out of time, but if you you're in the forum, so if you want to pop
Yes.
in and ask William more questions in there, feel free to do so, and we'll have the recording up, later on today. And I want to thank you so much.
And I want to thank everybody so much for being here and those that'll watch later. And Kelly, you for putting this on. It's wonderful. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. And with that, guys, we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll be back here at 30 minutes after the hour, wherever you are. And I'm going to stop the recording. See, I got to keep on top of myself.